Awesome. Well, first off, thank you, James, for putting this together, and thank you for putting it together over the years. I've been a participant as a attendee, and it's an honor to kind of be a participant as a panelist. Thank you, Adam. Always great to connect with you, and David as well. So yeah, so my name is Fritz Charles. I currently run growth at Universe. What is Universe? Universe, we are a mobile website builder. So we allow you to build a secure domain, build a website, and have it live on the internet within minutes from your phone. So obviously we compete with the Squarespaces and Wixes, but we're all mobile. You don't even need a computer. And we monetize the subscriptions. So obviously pertinent to this panel. But prior to that, I've been in the subscription space for a few years. So I used to work for the sports fan, I used to work at the NBA. So I worked on the NBA app. Yeah, yeah, and we have a product. We had a product called they have a product called NBA League Pass, which is like their version of Netflix, but allows you to watch the games on your phone or your Apple TV or what have you. And my job was to grow the subscriptions through the mobile side at that firm, and then went on to IAC. If you don't know about IAC, you probably know their products. So they run a lot of the dating apps, so Tinder, Match, OkCupid. I've been married, and I was with my now wife before this whole mobile dating mobile app craze has happened. So I was never a user, but I actually worked at the firm that built them, which was pretty cool. I specifically worked on a division called Apollon, and we built mobile subscription apps across the weather category, the lifestyle category, and the productivity category. So we had a app that allows you to track hurricanes. We had an app called our most popular app is probably called Productive, which allows you to track habits and keep with some of the goals that you have. And obviously that also monetizes subscriptions. And then another app we had was called Coloring Book. It was a coloring book that was aimed at adults. It was looked upon as kind of like a soothing practice to kind of help folks kind of just zone out and kind of more of a therapeutic tool. But that was one of our top apps as well. We also monetized the subscriptions. I then went on to work at Token Tax, which was a company called that was in the crypto space that allows you to calculate your taxes before returning to the mobile space at Universe as of last year. So Universe, we monetize subscriptions. We are about 15 people and growing, so we're actually hiring. You can check out the roles on workatuniverse.com. And yeah, we're lucky enough to close a round led by Google Ventures in April. So it's a good time. We're pretty excited. And thanks again, Adam. I'll pass it to David.
Hey everyone, Adam and Fritz, thanks for inviting me to join, or James for inviting me to join, and Adam and Fritz. It's been fun getting to know you guys over email as we plan the panel. Am I in the window? Looks like Fritz is still the speaker.
I see it.
Okay, I don't know how these webinars work. I see y'all highlighted on my end. Anyways, I've been an indie app developer since the very beginning. I started my company in March of 2008. When the App Store, I literally started my company days after Steve Jobs announced the original iPhone SDK. And so I've been building apps ever since, and it's been my living. I never hired any employees. I've always worked with contractors and partners and just a mishmash and hodgepodge of folks. And about 2 or 3 years ago, I started converting my apps to subscriptions and beat my head against the wall over and over and over again. We just had so many bugs. Implementing those subscriptions was a huge pain. And that's what led me to joining RevenueCat. So I've been at RevenueCat for almost a year now. And I first actually was reaching out to RevenueCat as a user, trying to figure out if they could help solve some of these bugs that we were having in my apps, and ended up working for them. So I actually still have my apps launched in a Pro and Weather Up are the two ones I'm most focused on right now. And then I work for RevenueCat. And so RevenueCat is a We help companies manage their subscriptions across the App Store, Google Play Store, and Stripe on the web. So, you know, as I was saying, it can be very challenging, especially for a smaller company, but even for a larger company, to dedicate the resources to do subscriptions well. You know, you need a back end that's verifying receipts. If you want to do any webhooks or any sophisticated data warehouse stuff, it can get really complex, especially trying to structure the data across all three platforms. So if you're selling on Android, Google Play has its own quirks. If you're selling on iOS, Apple has its own quirks. And so what RevenueCat does is pull all that together, make it super easily with open source SDKs to build your monetization strategy out. And then our back end is constantly pulling receipts, ingesting Apple's notifications, keeping the receipt status up to date in a real-time basis on renewals. Pending cancellations is a huge one that a lot of people don't realize. Is you can find out through the receipt when somebody's turned off auto renew up to a year ahead. You know, if they subscribe to your app today and then tomorrow they turn off auto renew, you don't see it as a cancellation until next year. But in the receipt, it actually says that. So anyways, I could go on about that kind of stuff, but it's all those kind of little things where it's like so much work. And I mean, really, you need a team. I mean, if you're a company doing subscriptions well, you need a team focused on this. And so what RevenueCat is we're your team. So we're 16 people. We're growing. We have some big news coming in the next few weeks about products we're working on and stuff. So yeah, it's exciting times. I'm really enjoying. Yeah, I mean, it's so new to me being an indie developer for so long to move into a company like this. But you know, my role there is developer advocate. So I've been chatting with our customers and potential customers for almost a year now, talking about their, you know, the hassles they face as subscription app developers, you know, their challenges with growth, their needs, and that kind of stuff. So I've really been diving into all of that and looking forward to sharing some of the stuff I've learned.
Thanks so much, David. I think I will quote a tweet here I read, which was, oh man, I just lost it. The gist of it was, you can try to do subscriptions yourself, but you'll end in tears, or you could use
yeah, that was Ben Thompson.
But yeah, I think that sums it up pretty well. I'll introduce myself. Adam Hattie. I'm VP of Marketing here at Current. Current is a mobile bank based here in New York City, really for folks who are overlooked by traditional banks, right? So traditional banks, they're good enough for most of us, right? Most of us in this chat, I should say. If you're a professional, if you work a 9 to 5 with a regular direct deposit, making, you know, an annual salary, you can kind of walk into a Chase or a Citibank, Bank of America, and you'll get a decent enough experience. For most Americans who are paycheck to paycheck, that's not the case, right? You're getting hit with maintenance fees because you're not keeping the right minimum balance or not meeting the right thresholds. You're getting hit with overdraft fees because, hey, you're paycheck to paycheck. By definition, you're near a zero balance. And you're paying hundreds of dollars of fees and pretty much getting treated like shit. And so we're a bank that's far more efficient, right? We don't have thousands of branches or tens of thousands of employees or any of that stuff. And so we can much more cost effectively serve most Americans who kind of fall into that bucket. Prior to working here at Current, I've been here about a year and a half. I did consulting for a number of years, helping apps with mobile user acquisition. I was VP marketing at a company called Quid, a company called Draft. I did Daily Fantasy Sports. Before that, worked at Tops. Actually started off my career at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's a fun fact. So if you ever want to discuss employment numbers or inflation, I can nerd out on that. But that's the breakdown of me. Last pitch for Current would be, we are hiring. We are hiring both on the marketing team and beyond the marketing team. So please go check that out at current.com. Just a quick icebreaker just to start things off. And for reference, I haven't prepped Fritz or David here for the icebreaker, but I wanted to know the least favorite app you've got on your phone right now, or one that you've recently removed. Either will work. For example, just drop this out here. I got a new air conditioner. It's LG. It's a smart air conditioner. The app is fucking garbage. Man, it's the first app on my phone, but it's kind of useful, so I have to use it. So, you know, also I should say integrated with my Google Home. That was pretty awesome. I won't give that credit to the app though. So either one of you can go first. You're looking through right now.
I'm looking.
Yeah, this is a great question.
You know, I've got a second one while you guys think. For my birthday, my wife bought me a smart scale, which was the biggest insult you could ever get on your birthday. App called or something, also a piece of shit. And it also tells me I'm fat, so double negative points there.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to just go with Wish, the shopping app. I downloaded it because I felt like I saw one of the promotions on social, and yeah, and I just wanted to check it out. And they are very aggressive with the push notifications, and the products that they push are always low quality and useless. So I'm actually going to delete it right now. Now that you reminded me to think about it. So that's probably my least favorite right now.
I know a couple of folks that wish, so sorry guys.
I will go with my bank app, Frost. I love Frost Bank, and they just did a big redesign of their app. But my wife is a therapist and has been doing teletherapy, and the agency she works out of for a long time was sending her an individual check for every therapy session she did. And so I would sit there with a stack of 20 checks. Thankfully, she only works part-time. And so I would sit there with a stack of checks and have to deposit every single one, which was enough hassle as it was. But then when they redesigned the app, they focused more on like prettying up the UI. Like it's all like that modern, everything's just white and big and everything. So now now not only is it like a bunch of taps to deposit each check, but they added like 3 additional taps. So every time I deposit a check, it is just this painful like 15 tap process that really probably could be like 7 taps. So yeah, the rest of the app's fine, but it's like that's like a core functionality to then like, and maybe for some people who aren't depositing so many checks, the experience is better and more clear, but they push the buttons off the screen because they have a bunch of like text at the top that you don't even need. So anyways,
yeah, only I knew a banking app I could recommend to you.
What's that?
So if only I knew a banking app that I could recommend to you.
I'm actually considering switching in part because of the app, to be honest.
Current.com, sign up today, it takes 2 minutes. Fritz, you know, I'm going to throw this question at you because and I should mention, you know, this entire panel is about subscriptions. Current is a subscription within itself. Now we're a little bit different because we're not an in-app subscription. We have a premium subscription product that costs $5 a month if you choose to opt into that, and that actually comes directly from your bank account because hey, we are your bank. So our subscriptions work a little bit more, but we actually face a lot of the same issues, particularly from a marketing standpoint. And so, you know, Fritz, Universe has a free trial, correct?
That's right. Not on all our subscriptions, but yes, on the main one.
So how long does the free trial last for?
So it's 3 days. We got to 3 days from a series of tests, but 3 days is our current one.
What was the longest period that you tested as a free trial?
7 days.
Gotcha. So starting from, you know, day one, how do you predict how those like free trial users, which is essentially all your users,
right,
or the vast majority of the users on day one, how do you predict like, oh, how will these convert to paid, right? Because I'm sure you don't want to wait that entire time period to kind of find out.
No, of course. So, yeah, so assuming that there's no historical data and we're just focusing on that cohort, it's going to be based on usage. So we allow people to create a website And then obviously when you create a website, you're not only, it's not just like get your domain and get it live. Like you're making a series of edits. You're trying to add new pages. You're changing your description. You're uploading your picture. There's a myriad of things that you could do to your website and obviously within our app. And if users are actually doing some of that stuff and doing it actively, that's probably the strongest indicator they're going to stick around. Our app is interesting because on a surface level, it's just a website builder, right? But in other ways, it's actually similar to some of the other apps, like in the fitness category, like Headspace or some other workout app, because there's an aspirational aspect to our product, right? It's like, hey, I want to start a business. I want to start a side project. I want to get it going, right? And just because you got your domain and you have the intention to start doing stuff doesn't mean that you're going to do it, right? And so we need to, what really allows us to understand if a user is going to stick around is obviously mainly did they vibe our product, but secondly, like, are they really actively trying to work on it? And then they will see the value that we have and also convert to pay. But yeah, if they're not using the products, they're probably not going to convert.
Makes
this is I don't want to turn this just into an ad for RevenueCat. I didn't read these Fritz's questions ahead of time, but it's actually something we're working on ourselves at RevenueCat to help solve. So obviously, like, what you really want to do is for your endpoint to be lifetime value. Like, you want to find which free trial link drives the strongest lifetime value for users. And so we actually already announced this quietly, and this is one of the big things we'll be announcing over the next few weeks is that, so we're rolling out a testing feature where the endpoint to that is a lifetime value, a very sophisticated LTV model that our founder has been putting together, and we actually just hired a data scientist who's going to be contributing to it. And so it uses Bayesian modeling with some of our general data as priors, and along, if you have historic subscription data in our platform, it uses that as well and models lifetime value as the endpoint. And then because we help drive the paywalls with our platform, it's fairly straightforward to set up these kind of A/B tests. And so we actually, as one of our alpha testers, set up a test between a 3-day free trial and a 7-day free trial. And I was surprised. It wasn't hugely different. And of course, the results are going to be so different for every app. So don't take this as like the answer for all apps. But for that app, 7 days won. I thought 3-day trials would win. But according to our model and the priors and everything else, the 7-day trial generated a higher lifetime value. So yeah, it's a really interesting challenge to figure out all these little details in a subscription app. And so it's something we're really interested in continuing to work on and help people and drive value there.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's awesome. And by the way, just inviting the participants here to just jump into the chat. James added, by the way, just catching up here, the Philip Hughes app, or the Philip Hugh app, is also shit. No, that's awesome info, David. And again, David, having been working in this space for like a dozen years, I feel like you have an incredible perspective on kind of the transition, the different phases of the App Store, right? And actually, with the news dropping around IDFA, and how that really is going to affect the way we attribute our mobile marketing spend. We might be entering a new phase right now. But we've seen launch of the App Store again back in 07, 08. Or launch of the iPhone, and then following up with the launch of the App Store, and then the launch of in-app purchases, and then the launch of subscriptions. Like, these are all like big changes. We saw this big change to subscriptions really happening a few years ago, I'd say, right? Where it was like, hey, this like model of like in-app, a la carte in-app purchases Like, again, maybe it worked for like games as a category, but it was really hard. As a business, it's really hard with retention being what it is to monetize and require a user to take an action explicitly every single time you want them to make a purchase. And so we saw this huge shift in businesses, you know, kind of radically shift over to subscriptions. My question for you, because you have incredible insight on this kind of across the space, is like, well, we've seen it very popular in certain verticals, right? Like media with, you know, music and movies, et cetera. Dating has been one that we've seen it. Dating has a hybrid approach, a lot of those apps. What verticals do you think maybe still have the biggest opportunities that haven't really made the switch to subscription, or hasn't, you know, kind of have, is like the low-hanging fruit that may be, or maybe higher hanging fruit at this point, low-hanging fruit's been picked?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. Let me step back though and give some nuance to your explanation of those transitions. You nailed the history of it, but there's a little nuance there in that when the App Store first launched in 2008, you either had to be a paid app or a free app. And a free app, Jobs famously said, like, free is free, we don't want to trick customers. And so, I mean, which is funny because he set up the whole in-app purchase thing as if, historically, by saying you're tricking customers if it's a free download and then they have to pay in the future. Well, then what was it, like 4 years later, Apple adds in-app purchases. And of course, now the story is different. It's a great way to monetize your app. Of course, we would want to do freemium. Like, that's a very successful web strategy. So then the App Store introduces in-app purchases. And so the entire industry starts shifting and learning, how do we do in-app purchases on mobile? And so then that lasted a few years. And, you know, that's when games really took off. Productivity apps and things like that is really hard. I mean, and I struggled with this for months on end. Like, do I switch to freemium? But how do I delineate the features? How do the App Store still does not allow charging for updates. So you can't do the old box software model of release an update once a year, charge customers, let the existing customers keep the same one. So the App Store itself has really limited the way apps monetize, and each stage of transition has not been a natural market shift. It's been an Apple-driven change in rules and opportunity. So after in-app purchase had been around a few years, Apple did, with the introduction of in-app purchases, allow subscriptions, but they only allowed subscriptions to media apps. Then I forget the exact date. I should know this stuff off the top of my head, but it was something like 2015 or 16 that Apple said, we're opening up subscriptions to more apps. So prior to that, you could not build whole classes of apps and charge subscription for them. And Apple is really picky about what apps were subscription or not. So when we talk about these phases of the history of monetizing apps and this sudden transition to subscriptions, it's not as much a market-driven thing that they just didn't work 10 years ago. It's that Apple didn't let us try 10 years ago. And Google kind of being the fast follower, you know, they've not really necessarily innovated a ton in those aspects. They've kind of followed Apple's lead on how Apple's letting developers monetize. I think Google maybe did do that purchases before Apple, or, I mean, there's some stuff. I probably shouldn't say Google's just a fast follower, but anyway, so that kind of rounds out the history of like kind of where we're arriving at this point, where subscriptions have been growing for the last, 3 to 4 years in all different verticals.
I totally forgot about the fact that for a while it was allowed for like media and not,
right.
Yeah.
And it's interesting too, because it was a slow opening of the channel. So it was media first. So like they let the New York Times, actually it was even very specifically newspapers and that kind of media. And then they started allowing like health and fitness apps and some of that. And so it was this like slow opening up of that business model for more and more verticals. So to answer your question, I think, it depends on whether you're talking like venture scale businesses or whether you're talking, great lifestyle businesses or whether you're talking something in between. I think that, over the next decade, we're going to see a lot of venture scale, mobile first consumer subscription apps. And I think that's clear. We already see, Headspace, Calm, Lightricks, like there's already examples. And I think that those are just the tip of the iceberg that's going to grow. So as far as like interesting verticals, I think the fundamental thing to understand about subscriptions is that, and this came out of some really great research from Ben Baharin. I forget what the name of his strategy company is, but he did TechPinion. He did some great research around consumer attitude towards subscriptions, and what consumers clearly said is that they don't mind paying for a subscription, but they want to see value, and they want to see that value delivered over time and that value increase over time. So I think rather than like saying there's a specific vertical that I think is underserved, I think where developers and companies need to be looking is at spaces where people value things and they don't have great solutions yet on the App Store. Or there's solutions, but they're not, sophisticated. They're not, product market fit. They're not like serving those needs deeply. So I think, a vertical I will mention is the hobby space. So like one of our customers at RevenueCat is Fishbrain. It's a company probably, none of you have ever heard of, but it caters to people who go fishing. And
I have heard of Fishbrain.
Okay, there you go.
Never been fishing.
RevenueCat.
Fishbrain.
Yeah, so here's this, little
I think they were
niche.
profiled in the last panel. The last panel.
Oh, cool.
Fishbrain. Yeah.
Cool. So it's this niche, like people who go fishing, but it's a huge niche, and Fishbrain's killing it. They're doing incredibly well. They're serving those customers and delivering value with, it's like a social network for fishing. It like tells you when the best time to catch. It has maps. It lets you like keep track of your fishing experiences. And so people who are into fishing just love that app. And when you love that app and find value, you're willing to pay. You're willing to pay via subscription. And so I think that's the kind of vertical that we're going to see continued growth in. And not all of those niches are going to be venture scale, but there's going to be some really big businesses built on what seem like goofy little hobbies. But turns out, 100 million people around the world fish every week, or whatever the numbers are. And so I think, yeah, if you're going to go looking for anything right now, probably the lowest hanging fruit is find a hobby that a lot of people do that's not well served by existing apps. And if you serve it well and deliver value, people will pay a subscription. And this is another thing I've been surprised at, is just how much people are willing to pay. The price elasticity is surprising, because again, I'm in the subscription space. I only subscribe to, maybe six apps. But the ones that I love, I don't mind. Like it doesn't, right. Because I love it. Another RevenueCat customer, but Zero, the fasting app, I've been using that for 2 years now to do intermittent fasting, and absolutely love that app. And they just introduced a subscription powered by RevenueCat a month ago, and I subscribed immediately. And honestly, I would have paid more than they're charging me, because they deliver, they gave some really cool differentiated features. They have really amazing content. The content, they're expanding it. Every week they're adding more content, so you feel like you're getting more for it. They're an incredible team. They're going to be adding more features and growing that. And again, that's another, it's how many people are going to fast or whatever? How big is this market really? Well, it doesn't really have to be that big of a market, but to me, I see it as kind of the next Headspace. It's who meditates. 5 years ago, I was that's it's a bunch of hippies or whatever. And now it's a huge thing. And so I think you're going to see a lot of that as well, of these health and wellness and other niches and hobbies and things like that, that if you serve them well and people love the app, you can charge them, and you can charge them a surprising amount of money, and have delighted, happy, enthusiastic customers like me raving about what an incredible app it is, not caring how much I'm paying. So,
you know, it's interesting because you mentioned earlier about how you know, an app like FishBrain that, you know, has really strong retention, can monetize via subscription. And I think, you know, at least in my experience, I've seen a lot of developers who look at subscriptions as a way of fixing their retention problem. And really, it's the inverse, right? It's like, hey, if you have strong retention, then subscription is actually a way to fix your monetization problem.
Yeah.
And so that's, I think it's interesting that you bring that up. Now,
I think there's another layer to that confusion too. It's like, I have a monetization problem. People aren't paying me enough. People aren't whatever. And they think, oh, if I can just switch to subscriptions, I'll have consistent revenue and I can build this thing that I want to build. But you got to deliver the value first. Like if people don't find it valuable, they're not gonna stick around, but they're sure as heck not gonna pay. And not, I mean, I've been talking a long time, but just one more quick example. My app, Weather App, is a perfect example of this. So it's in a really crowded category of the weather space. But we delivered a great product. It's got 6,500 reviews on the App Store. It's 4.5 stars. It's actually almost 4.6 stars. By all accounts, it's a great app, right? Well, guess what? It monetizes like crap because we don't have differentiated features in a very saturated market. We're not delivering value that people are willing to pay for. So a very small number of people love it enough that it's got good rankings, it's a good product, it's everything else. But like subscriptions did not solve our monetization problem. Like I knew this, and this is something we're working on, and I have some pretty cool stuff in the works. But you can't just turn on subscriptions and think that it's going to solve anything. You've got to deliver value for subscriptions to work.
100%.
That makes a ton of sense. Now, question for you, Fritz, here, which is actually you know, based off of one of the issues that David brought up, which is like, again, in this world of just in-app purchases, it's a little bit different because you know, at least for a lot of apps, it was whale-based, right? Certainly that was the case in games, but also in some non-gaming scenarios, right? Where you have somebody who's like David here, who's paying a fixed amount for zero, but actually he's in the top, you know, 0.5% of zero users whose willingness to pay is way higher. So, you know, by charging $9.99 a month, you're leaving, you know, $100 a month of consumer value untapped, right? Of course. That utility that you're providing that you're not charging for. I guess, you know, how does, like in your case, I think it's fair to say you're optimizing for subscription revenue. How does that differ from this world in which you are optimizing for in-app revenue, right?
Right.
Which is a very different model.
No, great point. So when you monetize, so, you know, obviously you brought the whale case, and when I think about whales, I'm thinking about games, I'm thinking about Zynga games, I'm thinking about Farmville, etc. And that is a whole concept where like 5% of your users actually end up bringing in all your revenue.
If you're lucky.
And
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, yes, if you're lucky for the successful apps. And you have a very long tail of people that are just spending a ton. And in those games, because games are almost infinite when it comes to usage, you can, as long as you keep them playing, you can kind of like stuff in-app purchases all over the place. And you kind of always trying to find that balance of keeping them engaged versus trying to monetize them with, you know, feature blockage, if you will. But the subscription side, there are similarities, but it's not like one in-app purchase and you could just, and then they pay you once and then they get everything. You don't really, it's basically, you usually just have one feature set. Sometimes you have tiered subscriptions. You have one feature set, you open it up for paid users, and then you depend on them continuously using that feature set. So I guess the main difference is, I think you still have the world concept only a small subset. I've never worked on an app where more than maybe 10% of installs were subscribers, unless the app was really had a subscription that was really cheap. I'm talking about like $2.99, 99 cents, things of that sort. But once you get to the $10 a month, $120 a year, I haven't seen a subscription that's able to monetize more than 10%. Obviously, I mean, maybe David has some data to the contrary, but in my experience, that hasn't been the case. So you still kind of have that concept where
Netflix or Spotify, it's not that hard, man.
Exactly right. So, and so, yeah, I mean, it's similar, particularly when you have and again, let me take a step back. So you brought up Netflix and Spotify, or especially Netflix. There are apps out there that you cannot use unless you're a subscriber. Like, that's it, right? So obviously those are not part of it. We're talking about strictly like freemium, where there is a limited usage, and then you kind of have the user run into like roadblocks or feature gates that allows them to purchase. And so like trying to find that balance between usage and pushing them to engage, but then also not open up your Komodo and not letting them do everything for free is always a fine balance. You need a lot of testing. But the cool thing around subscriptions versus in-app purchases, if you find that balance, and then the people that kind of cross that threshold find value, then you get paid periodically, right? Whereas when in-app purchase, you still have to go through and do that same upfront work, but you just got them to monetize once, and then you have to continuously find other things, other features that would allow them to convert again. And if you're not making a gain, that's complicated.
I think kind of a healthy thing that's happening in the ecosystem is that like that almost inevitably leads to what many view as like a predatory system, right?
Of course.
And Skinner games and all the stuff that's a whole Pandora's box within itself that we won't go on.
Right. Exactly right. And so you brought up a great point. So I think subscriptions are the monetization model where the user, the subscriber, the customer, and the developer are most aligned, right? Because especially if you're doing monthly, they're voting that you build something that they value, and they're voting with their dollars every month, right? Whereas in-app purchases doesn't really say the case. In-app purchases, you might have just been good at tricking folks, like you just indicated or implied, right? And so when you think about a sustainable business, I would argue that subscriptions are more of a sustainable business model in comparison to in-app purchases.
I think you nailed it there. In terms of alignment of incentives, I think a lot of people, maybe outside of the space might think of like, oh, subscriptions, developers want to go with subscriptions because it's like they're tricking people into subscribing for something long-term and then they don't cancel and don't use and all this stuff. And I mean, that's a portion of what's happening, but I think it actually frees the developer to focus on customer value rather than actively, hey, buy this, hey, buy this, hey, buy this. It's, hey, you're bought in, we're now in alignment. Let me make sure you're happy every single month and improve this service. I think that's a good point.
I was going to piggyback on that a little bit. So another quick plug, I run a forum for subscription app developers called Subclub. Fritz is in there. Hit me up, David at RevenueCat.com if you want an invite, if you're serious about subscriptions. We're kind of limiting right now, so I'm staging people in. But in there, I actually just recently posted about Tinder because I'm really fascinated by their approach. And it actually goes back more toward your original question, Adam, is that how do you get both that consistent revenue, but also like maximize revenue per user? And Tinder is like just a fascinating example. It felt really dirty downloading the app as a 41-year-old married man with 4 kids. But for science, I downloaded the app, I set up a fake profile, and
I got to tell my wife the same thing. I got to tell her, I got to try that same thing.
Just read my post on Subclub, Fritz. I'll save you the marital tension. I'm very upfront with my wife, and we talked about it. Anyway, so and they require you to like give your location and stuff. Felt Yeah. Anyhow, Tinder really does a fascinating job of straddling that line between leaving money on the table and being exploitative. I don't know how you pronounce that. Really exploiting users. So they have, I forget I think it's premium, gold, and then they also have consumable in-app purchases on top of that. And it's a fascinating balance, and they are really dialed in. I mean, you'd expect it, right? Tinder, they're making tons of money. They have huge teams on this stuff. But it is an impressive example of giving people and meeting people where they're at. So they never advertise all three on the same page. So if you hit one feature, they pitch you premium and you're paying one price. And then you can be subscribed to premium, and then you hit another feature and they want to upgrade you to gold, and you just see gold. And then there's I think one feature, I forget what it is, but there's one feature that's a consumable in-app purchase. And so that one, apparently you can, it's a boost your profile for 30 minutes. So you buy these boosts. And so the whales can go in there and buy their boosts and get more attention that they want. Certain features you can get for premium, and certain features you can get for gold. And then you can, so I'm with you, Adam, on like, there is a lot of exploitation of whales in gaming. And that's something I'm very much against and have, talked about on Twitter for years. But as a business, you do want to find ways to, artists do this, music artists selling a $300 package of their album with all the stuff that the true fans are deeply excited about. And then you sell your regular album for $10. So I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with finding ways to maximize monetization of your like diehard fans. And so if you're thinking about those things, look at Tinder as an example of how to balance those things really effectively. And again, I'm not using Tinder to actually seek dates. So I don't know if it feels like it's exploiting users when you're actually there using it, but it's an example to kind of look at and learn from.
I think that's, kind of nail on the head in terms of, hey, there's not much consumer utility that just like surplus being left out there. That's kind of all being captured. And I think that's a good thing. Obviously, that's a good thing for businesses and things like that. But, just, hey, as businesses, as services, it's kind of progressive if you want to think of it politically in that, hey, the folks who are getting the most value, who can afford to pay the most money, are essentially subsidizing it for those who don't. Not the worst thing in the world. I won't go down that route anymore because it gets a little messy.
Yeah, the exploitive part is when you're like trapping people into these gambling loops in some of these freemium games. That that's where I worry socially. But yeah, we can.
Then the kids games as well. It's also taking advantage of kids.
Now, James, we're at time. I'm not going to stop until you make us stop.
I can go.
I'll talk quickly about here at Current we have 2 subscriptions actually, right? So I talked about how hey we're paying kind of for those underserved, but we also actually have a teen product. So parents can sign their teens up for a bank account. They get their own debit card, something that sets them up for like adulthood, right? And gives them a real bank account at a young age. For those of you who don't know, at least in the United States, you can't sign up for a checking account if you're under 18. You can't get your own debit card. Which, like, hey, when we were teens, we're all kind of old people in this group. Was not that big a deal, but today, where it's like everything's online and all teens want to do is buy shit on Fortnite, it's kind of a big deal, right? So for that, we've used an annual subscription, right? It's $36 a month versus our premium account for individuals, where it's $5 a month. And so and we've tested annual and monthly kind of for both options. But we're certainly not done with that, right? It's something that we're still kind of playing around with and, deciding, hey, how much do we discount an annual membership? And there's business implications for this, right? It just in terms of sheer cash flow and things like that as well. But I'd love to hear either of your opinions on that.
Sure. I'll jump in. So we've spent a lot of time trying to figure that out. And you just hit the last thing you just mentioned is a very important point, cash flow. So it depends on the arc of your company, right? If you're at a point where cash flow is important, you're probably willing to do annual subscriptions, even at a lower potential LTV, because you get that money up front. And in the app world, unfortunately, we for growth, a lot of it is dependent on paid acquisition, and so you'll have that money up front.
I would imagine that almost everybody listening to this, cash flow is at an important point, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So
whether you're a small kind of more lifestyle app, as they was referring to, or VC backed one, and in some cases even more important in that case. I can't imagine there are too many people listening there who are just sitting on like large piles of cash.
Exactly.
But sorry to interrupt you first.
No, good point. So yeah, so you're able to get that money up front, and you're able to reinvest in your team, reinvest in your products, and invest in paid acquisition for future growth, right? So if you're in like super high growth period and cash flow is a concern, annual work for you. Secondly, we just talked about how, subscriptions, particularly monthly subscriptions, are alignment of value to, value between the subscriber and to the product. And so it's almost like this source of truth, if you will. But like, let's say you just haven't perfected that yet, right? And so, you have monthly users that are not retaining as quick as you want, as long as you want. Sometimes you kind of push people to annual just to buy yourself more time to win them over, to improve the products. Eventually, you're gonna have to pay the piper, as you will, because at the end of the year, they have to stick around. You're just pushing the can down the road. But if you're very confident that within that 12 months, you're going to make leaps in your product to kind of keep them around, then it may be worthwhile to push that forward. That being said, you could assume that the number of subscribers you get is going to be less, right? So there's going to be a point where even though you have a lot of money, more money up front, people are just more adverse to spending that amount of money, even if it's at a discounted monthly rate, just because it just sounds a lot more stressful and it sounds a lot more risky. So you're going to have to take a haircut on your conversion rate. So that the point where you make a decision is multifaceted, and the inputs are multifaceted. But I think cash flow is a concern. Also, buying yourself more time to improve the product is a concern. But overall, you're going to have to make sure that you align the value of your app to what you're asking people to pay for, even if you kick the can down another 11 months.
Yeah. I don't have much to add except to say that I desperately want to build better tools for this kind of stuff. So I'll be pushing at RevenueCat for all you guys who don't have a data scientist and a huge team to be able to like run these calculations on individual cohorts and stuff like that. Keep your eyes on RevenueCat, because this is the kind of stuff I'm passionate about and want to help smaller teams get more sophisticated tools to be able to make those kind of decisions with better data.
Well, thanks so much to both of you, to James. It's certainly miss seeing everybody in person here, but I think this whole structure has been really great and well done, James. David, shout out to David real quick for having recovered, being on the leading edge of recovering from coronavirus, putting his health data out there, but he's with us fresh off of that. So thanks, David. Do you have anything else you want to leave folks with? You should follow him on Twitter. I can tell you that. Great Twitter follow.
Oh, thanks. No, that's it. I feel like this was a little too much of an ad for RevenueCat, but I'm just passionate about the subscription economy and building my apps. Go check out Weather Up and Launching a Pro. yeah, I'm just really excited about the stuff we're building, and I mean, it's kind of fun with my role at RevenueCat being developer advocate. Like, I really am the voice of developers inside the company, and so all the passion you see is not just directed at RevenueCat. It's because I get to sit on the inside and help push forward the kind of tools that I want to use in my own apps. So, yeah, I really love that, and sorry if I made too much of an ad for.
Sign today, takes 2 minutes.
Yeah, so it's great. Thank you, Adam and Fritz. Really enjoyed the panel, and definitely want to catch up more with you too. And wish we were in person so we could go have drinks tonight and catch up a little more. But I look forward to meeting up with you guys in the future when that's possible. And thanks, James, for allowing us to do this.
And Fritz, any parting words?
Yeah, so it was a pleasure and honor to share this panel with you, Adam, and also with you, David. Thanks to James for setting this up. Yeah, no, I mean, parting words are, obviously subscriptions are where it's at. I'm a bit biased, as is David. It's this awesome way to align your app's purpose with your customers and have them continuously vote on your progress with their dollars. So it's a great directional thing, right? So as you try to prioritize what to do as a company, what features to add, the features that increase subscription retention are the ones that you should always lean toward. So it's a great way to kind of, for a lot of high growth companies, there's a lot of debates around what to do next, how to do it. Like subscription is a great argument finalizer, if I will. But yeah, so it's an honor to be here again. Universe is, check it out. We're on universe.com. We're Universe on the iOS store, not on Android yet. And we're hiring for a bunch of roles on the engineering side, on the design side. Check us out. Reach out to me on LinkedIn. I'm on Twitter as well. I look forward to when we can do this in live and in person as well. Thanks again.
Well, thanks so much, guys. I appreciate it. I actually just had some construction start here, so I apologize for that noise. I should mention actually where I'm here actually in Current's office. Hey, phase 2, we're opening things back up here. Please, that's my only plug. It's current.com. Check out our careers page. Check out open roles across the board. Where we're growing and doing cool things. It's almost like I'm in charge of marketing for this company. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks a lot, James. I think we can sign off with that.
Right.
Bye.